thought we might spend a few moments talking about how to win at Dungeons and Dragons. I'm guessing that most players of tabletop role-playing games have learned that these games are not won or lost, at least not in the same sense that we typically think of in regards to competitive gaming. And indeed, for most players, most of the time, all that has been won from the game is an evening's entertainment or recognition from one's peers for being especially imaginative. With a bit more introspection, we might even find small victories in terms of increased self-awareness or enhanced social skills. Personally, I would agree that those rewards are what is really won through gameplay. In fact, in an article written for the Dragon magazine, one of D&D's principal architects, Gygax, suggested that was how he answered people who queried him about the victory conditions for the game of Dungeons and Dragons. At about this point, I'm always asked, well then, how do you win? Who wins? The answer is everybody, providing that the game is well run. The DM gets the satisfaction of testing his abilities against those of the players, the fun of taking the non-player parts, and the accolades of participants when a particularly well-done adventure or series has been completed. Players enjoy the challenges of each situation and have the prospect of continuing adventures and puzzles to confront them, each with his or her game persona. Thus, all taking part in the campaign get something besides a momentary diversion. Winning no more applies to D&D than it does to real life. The successful DMs and players gain renown via their campaigns or their superior characters. To enthusiasts of the game, it is far more satisfying than triumphing in a single game or whole series of games. However, from its inception, D&D has also been a game that one could play at tournaments, with players who were often relative strangers to one another prior to commencement of an opening session. Of course, most individual tournaments developed their own scoring systems, and players may have disagreed with how winners were determined for a particular session or tournament. There were also efforts to standardize scoring systems through organizations like the Role-Playing Game Association, or RPGA. One such system was proposed by a regular tournament attendee and occasional tournament organizer, Dr. Alan Barwick. This system was published as an article in the Dragon magazine, issue number 49. It is, in essence, the basis for how I've always chosen to score competitive play. Dr. Barwick presented a list of 36 considerations for determining the best team at a tournament. Additionally, he suggested 8 criteria, which might be used along with all appropriate criteria from the team list to determine the best individual player. Finally, he also suggested a dozen reasons for eliminating players from consideration based on their behavior during the game. Although most play is not done at tournaments, I think these scoring criteria can also serve as a guide to how we might better play together in our home games. Since the original list was not intended to be taken in a particular order, I have taken the liberty of arranging these criteria into different groups. While any one item may well apply to more than one grouping, this categorization makes it a bit easier to discuss. So for this section in the team scoring that I called Achieve Objectives, we're really talking about gameplay objectives within the course of the quest. And here's the list that Barwick gave. Achieve the final objective or come closest to it. Accomplish as many of the minor objectives as possible. Accomplish the objectives in as short a time as possible. Get sidetracked as little as possible. Solve the puzzles encountered during the quest. Disrupt the enemy's way of life as much as possible as you encounter them, or making plans as you encounter them anyway. Make the best map, mapping being a traditional duty of the party, or especially old school role-playing. Rescue any prisoners of similar alignment, and this may benefit the party immediately, or they may see rewards after the quest. Kill monsters, obviously, as you encounter them. Check rooms, avoid disaster, and don't get captured. In the second part of the team scoring, we're looking at the management of resources overall. So this is both things that the party starts with and also what they acquire through the course of play. And we find such items as take the least damage, have the fewest team members die, use up as little as possible their non-rechargeable magic weapons, find artifacts and magical items and identify them as to their proper use, collect treasure, use native and special inherent abilities. Use magical and clerical spells as opposed to hoarding the spells when their use would have helped. Prudently select equipment, spells, and weapons to take with them on the mission. Bypass traps. Enlist aid. Convert monsters when possible. Be undetected by the monsters to the greatest extent possible. And avert fighting via reasoning as much as possible. In this third section for the team scoring, we're really looking at issues of respecting the game, not just the game itself, but also your fellow players and the dungeon master. And so we find items like role play their characters, think before they fight before they desert, make personal sacrifices so that the team may go on, cooperate mutually before they argue, take initiative before indecisiveness, act wise before being stupid or rash, quash rumors and establish facts, gather intelligence and interrogate, be honest as opposed to cheating on such things as die rolls, current hit points, spells used up, position of character relative to environment, using only knowledgeable available to that character, and following the rules set down at the beginning. Act before being passive. Do not argue with the DM. Now, for scoring individuals, we include all the previous items to the extent possible, at least possible to apply to an individual character. Plus, we also look at the additional criteria mentioned here. Works in harmony with the group, provides good suggestions, organizes, follows and leads, lets others in the party contribute, accomplishes individual goals, uses good combat strategy, and is polite to other players and to the DM. Lastly, Dr. Barwick included some criteria for disqualifying players from consideration for best player or, as I guess, contributing members of best team if it came to that. These are poor behaviors that have really detracted from everyone's experience at the table. We include cheats on dice rolls, peeks in the book, tries to do everything and will not share the responsibility, acts as caller, rolls the reaction die, searches all the chests, bodies and walls, binds all the wounds, decides all the spells to be thrown, does all the mapping, takes all the treasure, attempts to do all the listening and opening of doors, etc. Continues to argue with the DM after the DM has listened to appeals and the DM has made a final ruling. Is physically or verbally abusive to anyone in the game, lies to the DM, peeks at notes or written information given by the DM to any of the other players, peeks behind the DM's screen at the DM's materials, reveals information to someone with whom the DM said he could not share it, offends or insults the DM by either language or actions that the DM has previously ruled are unfit, whether in role-playing or in reality, acts in a manner so outrageously stupid that the entire party is endangered. For example, while in a party of lawful first-level characters, he rushes from his party and attacks a large sleeping dragon that could have been avoided. And lastly, extreme violations of alignment, such as a paladin's torturing his prisoners or lying to his followers in order to send them to a certain death. Before ending this video, I'd like to provide some examples of tournament characters and also some ideas about how GMs might track scoring for the players running those characters. In tournament play, it is commonplace to hand out pre-generated characters, which helps to ensure both character and game balance. This may make it sound like tournament participants were not expected to roleplay their characters. However, players were often provided with a short background for their character. So, for example, let's take a look at the characters provided to the players at Gen Con in 1981 for the To the Aid of Falx adventure. Incidentally, as an aside, this was Frank Menser's first published adventure module. The adventure itself is primarily a theme park meant to test the player's understanding of the rules and what their character could do within the rules. But one of the more important parts of the module in terms of tournament play is the character guide, which we see over here. And each character came with a sketch and a blurb about their character's background. It's true for each of the characters. This has become a relatively rare module, and this physical copy is one of the more expensive things I happen to have. It was quite cheap when I originally purchased it back in the day. As an example of how a GM might keep track of the player's actions during the game, as well as keep track of scoring the play of those characters, let's take a quick look at the Dungeon Master's record sheet and scoring sheet for Module C2, the Ghost Tower of Inverness, which was used at WinterCon 8 in 1979. This is a Dungeon Master's record sheet, keep track of the stats associated with each of the characters, and then different notes about magic items and so forth that would be used during play. And then, most importantly, what we have is the Dungeon Master's scoring sheet, which it also includes space for team scoring and a nice time record turn tracker. I think that's probably enough on this subject for now, but please let me know in the comments section if you have any additional questions or wish to remark on the practice of scoring play in TTRPGs. Thank you very much for watching.